You are listening to Particular Pilgrims, Stories from Reformed Baptist History with Commentary. I'm your host, Ron Miller, pastor of Covenant Baptist Church of Clarksville, Tennessee, and a longtime student and collector of Particular Baptist History. This is brought to you by Covenant Baptist Theological Seminary. The Particular Baptists thrived in the Commonwealth of England in the 1650s, in part because there was a degree of religious liberty that allowed them to worship and evangelize without significant interruption. Their always present opposition was ineffective to stop their rapid spread. But with the return of the monarchy in the person of Charles II in May of 1660, this freedom was curtailed. Baptists and other dissenters were hopeful that some of the liberty they had experienced would be retained with Charles's restoration. This was because less than a month before, while at Breda in the Dutch Republic, Charles had issued a declaration that seemed to include a wide liberty of conscience. In part, Charles said, quote, "We do declare a liberty to tender consciences, and that no man should be disquieted or called into question for differences of opinion in matters of religion, which do not disturb the peace of the kingdom." This aligned with the Baptist view and led them to welcome Charles back with certain hopes. But Charles left the execution of this religious liberty to Parliament, who was not interested in approving any form of it. Instead, in the next few years, they approved 5 laws that attempted to remove all religious practice that varied from the state church. These 5 laws are collectively known as the Clarendon Code. Their enactments included requiring any state office holder to take the sacrament of communion from the Church of England, compelling the use of the Book of Common Prayer for worship, requiring any minister to publicly assent to everything the prayer book said without reservation, disallowing more than 5 people over age 16 to meet for religious purposes, and more. These laws had the effect of not only outlawing all dissenting worship, but of ejecting almost 2,000 Puritan and reforming men from the Church of England. They destroyed tens of thousands of lives economically, socially, and religiously. Dissenters were silenced, fined, exiled, imprisoned, and killed. This specific joining of church and state into an instrument of persecution is called the Great Persecution by historians. The hopes of the Particular Baptists and other nonconformists were dashed as the nation entered a retrograde phase of religious liberty. And for us today, this is an uncomfortable case study of what can happen when a so-called Christian government regulates religion. Almost 5 years ago, in episodes 12 and 13, I introduced you to one of the Baptist martyrs for this period, Thomas DeLon. He was the scholar who replied in writing to a sermon of high-ranking Anglican curate Benjamin Calamy that criticized dissenters as having consciences that were, quote, too scrupulous. DeLon argued for religious liberty in several works, including one titled Compulsion of Conscience Condemned. For this, he was imprisoned along with his wife and children, and in the following months, they all died together in what DeLon called, quote, a perfect representation of that place you describe when you mention hell. The famous author and admirer of DeLon, Daniel Defoe, wrote that by his own research, 8,000 nonconformists died in English prisons during this period, and 60,000 families had been ruined. The Quakers and Baptists made up the majority of these victims. During this great persecution, the Particular Baptists continued to hold out for liberty of conscience, but as explained in earlier episodes, they differed as to its limits and implementation. An example of other confessional signers who disagreed with Kiffen's limited view are Nehemiah Coxe and William Collins. They are considered to be the primary editors of the 1689 Baptist Confession of Faith. We'll look at the Confession's teaching on liberty of conscience in our next episode. But between the time of its release in 1677 and its approval by the General Assembly in 1689, Coxe, Collins, and other particular Baptist pastors faced an occasion where their broader understanding of religious liberty was displayed. In early 1685, King Charles II died, and his brother James took the throne. In an age with widespread suspicion of anything, quote, papist, having the Roman Catholic James II become king greatly concerned many in England. Then in 1687, James published a Declaration for Liberty of Conscience, which suspended the repressive parliamentary laws on dissent from the 1660s. Once again, nonconformists could meet for worship and even hold public office. Liberty of conscience was granted for Protestant dissenters and all others, including Quakers, Roman Catholics, and even Jews and Muslims. This was a proclamation of full religious liberty. It was opposed by many, not just for its content, but because the king had overruled a parliamentary statute. But the very first to offer their thanksgiving to the king for this declaration of liberty was a group of particular Baptists led by Nehemiah Coxe. They thanked him that they were now, quote, delivered from our past distresses and our families from ruin, and are, quote, also allowed the free exercise of our religion. Toward the end of their short address, they wished that the whole world would see the wisdom and truth that, quote, conscience is not to be forced, even as they touted the benefits to the state of what they called an entire liberty of conscience. Coxe and his fellow particular Baptists wanted full religious liberty to be the legal reality in England. While James's declaration was a start, it needed to be codified in law so that it did not depend on the changing fancies of a king or parliament or people. Thomas Plant and Benjamin Dennis, Baptist pastors from London, wrote that they hoped this kingly dispensation for liberty of conscience would, quote, have that perfection by law. King James then set out to get Parliament to change the law. He knew the sitting body wouldn't agree, so he dissolved it and prepared to call a new one, which he hoped to influence to vote for a general toleration for all peaceful religionists. The king began what is called the Repeal campaign, since the goal was to repeal the penalties against dissenters. He established a board of men called regulators, who were paid to identify and recommend men for Parliament who were in favor of repeal. There were 15 such regulators, and at least 10 have been identified as Baptists, including Nehemiah Coxe, William Collins, Richard Adams, James Jones, Benjamin Dennis, and Thomas Plant. Perhaps the Baptists have never had so much potential political influence on the English nation as in this, and it was for the establishment of full religious liberty. But in the end, James could see there would not be enough change in Parliament, and the Repeal Act never passed. By the end of 1688, though, James was no longer in power. William and Mary landed in November, James fled, and the glorious revolution was accomplished. With it, in May of 1689, came the Act of Toleration. This granted freedom of worship to Protestant nonconformists, including Baptists, Quakers, Congregationalists, and Presbyterians. It did not give that right to Roman Catholics, Jews, or non-Trinitarians. Note, this was toleration, not liberty, meaning that the government still claimed authority to rule over every man's religion in the land, and was graciously allowing a few citizens to practice their mistaken worship. This was not religious liberty granted by God to all men, but toleration, a grant from the government which could change to a few. It was not rooted in liberty of conscience, of doing to all men as you would have them do to you, which were prominent positions of the particular Baptists at the time. Nehemiah Coxe didn't experience this toleration, as he died the same month as the act was given. But his work as a regulator certainly impacted the breadth of the granted toleration, so that Baptists were generally able to worship peacefully from then on, though still handicapped in many other societal ways. Coxe's death and the coming of toleration didn't immediately end the particular Baptist differences over the scope of religious liberty. A letter by William Kiffen from September 1688 and a document from the General Assembly of 1689 shows that there was divided opinion over the Repeal campaign for several years. And yet there was at bottom a fundamental agreement about liberty of conscience, as evidenced by the 1689 Confession. We will look at that next time. Thank you for listening today. This is Ron the Baptist wishing you grace and peace.